everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'm pleased to welcome you to this year's event. My name is Stacey. I'm a marketing executive here at Trinity College London for our language qualifications. So this is the first breakout session of the day, covering young learners, and yeah, pleased to welcome you all. I can see some of you in the chat are saying hello. We've got people from all over the place. We've got Hong Kong, Italy, Cyprus, Spain, Pakistan, Dubai. It's fantastic. So thank you all for participating today. I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, which is A.Gregoriades. Good morning, Anita.
Good morning, Stacey.
Morning. Hi, thanks for joining us. So Anita is the founder and director of Jolly Workshop, which is an award-winning language school in Cyprus, and that specialises in teaching English to children and young adults. Anita is also a teacher and teacher trainer, and she's presented in conferences in Cyprus and abroad. She has a keen interest in material development and creative writing techniques, and enjoys running her teacher training workshops. And currently, Anita is a TESOL doctoral student at the University of St Andrews. So welcome, Anita. Thank you. I will leave you with Anita now. She'll go through her presentation. Please, if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box and we will be able to go through them at the end. But enjoy. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Stacey, for the lovely introduction. It's really nice to see some friends joining me today, and I hope you find this session, really interesting. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone, depending where you are watching us right now. It's such a great pleasure to be with you today, and I do hope that you find the topic as exciting as I do. As Stacey said, I am a language school owner, in Cyprus, and I have been a teacher, for most of my life. And creative writing in the ESL or EFL classroom is my newfound passion, and my current area of research. So, as you all know, this session will run as a workshop, and I promise I'll do my best not to bore you to death, and I'll try to make this session as interactive as possible. So, are we ready? Let's get started. Now, as an energizer, I have chosen to share this picture with you. I'd like you to use the chat box and write what you see on the screen and what we normally use it for. Okay? Right, so write in the chat. So I have a clip in. It's a clip. Yeah? It's a material to hold papers, clip, binder. Yes, we use it to attach things. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Yes, that's right. Good. And yes, it's a binder clip or a paper binder or a fallback clip. And there's another name to that as well, or a bulldog clip. And people use different names for it. And that's right. We actually use it to hold sheets of paper together. Now, an interesting fact for you. The binder clip was invented, by a fellow called Louis Boltzmann in the beginning of the 20th century. So what Boltzmann did was to create the clip to help his father, who was a writer at the time, to keep his manuscript, organized. As his dad was really messy. It's a bit like me. So the interesting part of the story, however, is that the original design, of the binder clip has stood the test of time and remains largely unchanged. So what you see on the screen right now is very close to the original design. But one thing has changed, however. People have been quite creative with the uses of this item. And they have come up with ideas, lots of different ideas on how to use it. So, for example, we can use these paper clips to organize the cables. So if you have watched 5-minute crafts, I am sure that you can think of other creative ways, of using these paper binders. Can you use the chat box and, share these alternative ways of using the paper clip? Nose plucker. Okay. Yes, a hair clip as well. Yes. Okay. Good. Ziploc bags. Yes, I've got that one. Closing packets of chips or cereal. Yes. Yes, to close tightly. Absolutely. Yes. Yes, I also use them. Okay. All right. Reminder note. Okay, good. Let's see some of the uses. Okay, good. So we have various uses, and I really liked your ideas, especially the nose clip idea. What I have here, and this is just a fraction, of the uses, of this particular item. So the first one on your tab, on your top left-hand side, you can use it as a money clip, right? Or a clip, as you have already mentioned, to seal your bag of crisps, after having eaten like 2 or more while watching a rerun of Friends, Netflix perhaps, or organized materials in the classroom, and it also works really nicely, as a wire organizer. I have tried that one, it actually works. A mobile stand or a hot glue stand, and you also have some really interesting ideas that I'll try, sometime later on. They are really creative. But that's the thing, however. Creativity is an innate trait to us humans. We love to create new things. Now, the big question right now is what happens in the classroom? How can teachers, how can we promote and enhance children's creativity, and why not adults' creativity, and by extension, their creative writing skills? So,
Hey Anita, sorry, can you just lower your camera slightly just so we can see you fully?
yeah, is it okay like this?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. So the first thing that we are going to do is identify which types of writing are creative and which are not, and briefly discuss some of the most important features, of creative writing. Now, we are also going to look into the positive impact, that creative writing activities can have on our language learners, or on second language learners or our foreign language learners, and expose some of the factors that shape students' writing identities. And, sometimes even our own writing identities as teachers. We all know that reading, sorry about that. So let's jump to the next slide. So we all know that reading plays an important role in young learners' language development. I am going to talk about, the different kinds of reading we can do with our students so that they will develop their critical thinking skills and hopefully, become better at writing. Now, finally, we are going to see a couple of examples of creative writing techniques. The first one is called The Art of Telling Stories Wrong, which is a technique devised by Gianni Rodari. And we are going to wrap it up with a low prep writing activity. I will get you into writing. And this time, this writing activity was suggested by a storyboard artist working for Pixar movies. And what I like about it is that it requires very little preparation, and you can adapt it, for different ages and different levels. So let's get started then. Now, on this slide, you will be able to see various types of writing that people perform, on a daily basis. The list of writings is obviously not exhaustive, but I think it is easier to start by unpacking what is not creative writing, so that we'll be able to come up with a working definition of creative writing. Now, I'd like to ask you to write in the chat box what you think is not a creative form of writing. Okay? So I have technical writing. I have essays. That's interesting. I have a journalistic. Okay. A report, business writing. Yep. Journalist. Yes, tabloid journals. I like that one. Good. Okay. There are a lot of people who agree on and memoirs. Okay, good. So let's see what we have here. So let's discuss this a bit. You know, I have singled out journalistic writing. We're going to discuss all this. Technical writing, scholarly or academic writing, and professional or business writing as being not creative. So if we take these distinctions, you know, at face value, it is true that, you know, in the case of journalistic writing, there is very little room, you know, for creativity, unless, of course, it's tabloid writing, as one of the participants mentioned. When someone reports, you know, the news and the stories and real events, there is no room for creativity there, I think. So then we have technical writing, and the goal of technical writing is, you know, to provide information, you know, about specialized topics, such as, you know, a manual, you know, providing instructions on how to install a software, you know, on your computer, or even what else? Or even product descriptions. Academic writing then refers primarily to non-fiction writing, hopefully, which most of the times uses a more formal tone. It follows specific conventions and engages, you know, in scholarly conversations. You know, research academics, they usually cite or they discuss other researchers' work. And the last one, business writing, involves, you know, things such as, you know, client proposals, you know, emails, memos. So there is no room for creativity, you know, in that area. But you know what? In creative writing, there is generally this idea, you know, of imagination and or originality. A creative writing piece, however, does not necessarily have to have elements of fiction. This is what we have in our mind, that, you know, creative writing should be a story, should be, you know, fiction story. Personal essays, for instance, memoirs or biographies, all these are, you know, types of creative writing. And there are even, you know, some journalistic types of writing which can be seen as creative, because, you know, they may share, you know, the author's personal journey, his thoughts, his feelings, you know, about real life events. So coming down, you know, coming up with a precise definition of creative writing, you know, this can be, you know, quite hard to pin down, as differences between creative, you know, and informative writing are sometimes quite blurred. Now, on the whole, you know, experts in the field agree that, you know, creative writing has these elements that you see on the screen. So they say that it is a form of writing that, you know, allows people to express, you know, their inner thoughts, their ideas, you know, their emotions through the medium of writing, through the written word. Now, the overall intent, you know, of creative writing is not to inform, but to express the storyteller's feelings, because, you know, a writer is in a way, a creative writer is in a way a storyteller. So And he uses creative writing to express his feelings and engage the reader in those feelings. And writing creatively is not restricted, restricted to the more creative, writing genres, if I might say, such as fiction or, poetry or drama, but it also includes non-fiction forms of writings, such as the ones that I have just mentioned, the memoirs, the biographies, the autobiographies, or even pieces which are more informative in nature, such as the example that you can see on the screen. This is a non-fiction book by Brown called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And I read this one, and it is really, a very exciting and account, of the history of Native Americans, which culminates in the massacre of Wounded Knee. And it has some really beautiful lyrical pieces, passages, in that particular account. Now, do you perform any creative writing in your classrooms? Would you like to share with us if you do any creative writing, and if yes, what type of creative writing you perform in your own classrooms? Would you like to share that in the chat box? Daisy, can I allow a participant to talk?
I don't believe we can turn that on at this point, I'm afraid.
Okay,
And if
okay,
you have a question, please put it in
yes,
the Q&A
yes.
box.
All right, good. All right, that's fine. Writing a horror story like that one. Okay. Right. Okay, short poems. A lesson about recounts. I like that one. We're going to get back to that one. Recounts. Okay. Oh, really nice ideas. Okay. So, actually, there are many reasons why we should, include creative writing activities in the language classroom. So one of the main reasons is that, our second language learners, they become more motivated when they're engaged, in creative writing activities. So when we have a standard second language classroom, creative writing activities, they promote group cohesiveness and cooperation between our students. And at the same time, they boost learner autonomy, and it's true that they break the monotony, of the classroom routine. This means that us teachers need to establish conditions, and create engaging activities that favor a culture of creative writing within the classroom. Now, and it is creative writing that supports the development of language at all levels. And when I say at all levels, I mean that children can learn not just grammar, but also syntax and even spelling. They can use their new words and phrases and express their ideas in a more coherent, in a more organized way. I need to stop at this point and say that, the teaching, I've got nothing against the teaching of grammar, but the teaching of grammar, and other language mechanics such as, spelling and punctuation is more effective when these aspects, of language are taught in context. Grammar is important, but it needs to know its place, in the writing process. It takes on its important role when it is active within a piece of writing. And you know what? I like getting 14 fronted adverbials, and 7 adjectives, in the first 3 sentences. This does not mean that you are engaging your learners in something creative. Now, research has shown that second language creative writing leads to more reading. What happens right over here is that, students who engage in creative writing, are more likely to read books, to read literature, because as students, assume their roles, as creators of literature, they're more open to read, the works of other authors. And finally, while engaging, in this type of activities, children improve their problem-solving skills because they are required, to think critically in order to build plot and characters, that actually stick together. Now, we're going to have a look at the writing identity and what factors, shape our learners and even our own, writing identity. Now, children's writing interests, and identities are shaped, by a great number of factors, such as, family dynamics, parents, friends, peers, and teachers. It is said that, that socioeconomic background, also plays, a significant role, in shaping learners' identities. Teachers' perceptions about writing, however, are the ones that frame and mold, they shape a young learner's writing identity. Now, in turn, our understandings, as teachers, our understandings of writing as teachers are framed by what we call, by contextual factors. And these contextual factors can be, the current policies, it can be the school policies, government policies, or in my case, where I come from in Cyprus, policies, imposed on us, by exam bodies, which are likely to constrain our understandings, of what counts as right. So in an ideal world, I don't know, we don't live in an ideal world, but in an ideal world, creative writing teachers, are a blend, of writers, teachers, and researchers, at the same time. They write along their students. I don't know if you do that. I started doing that, the last couple of years or so. And we write along our students in order to understand, the difficulties and all the processes, a student goes through, while crafting their writing. But at the same time, I feel that while performing creative writing, teachers think both critically and reflectively about their own teaching. Now, exposure, to a variety of written texts play an important role, in the development of writing skills. Reading is inextricably linked to writing, and the best writers in class are always avid readers. They are drawing upon what we can say, what we can call, the narrative storehouse. Stragglers may have not yet built up, that storehouse, so they are unfamiliar with the images, and language patterns. Now, read aloud sessions like the one you see on the screen right now, or shared reading sessions, enable the teacher to draw learners' attention to the salient, to the more basic elements, of each story. For example, the protagonist, the setting, the conflict, and so on. And then what the teacher can do is to sort of, gradually teach the students how to spot, the literary elements, such as the metaphors or the idioms that the writer uses to express, the character's feelings, like the one that you see on my slide. So this is an idiom. Can you guess the idiom? Would you like to write this in the chat box? Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right. This is over the moon. Yes. So it is essential then to teach them first how to read literature before asking them to engage in creative writing activities. Now, reading and writing are closely related because they are both constructive processes and they share similar cognitive tasks. They sort of, take bits of information, and organize them, in comprehensible units. When reading and writing are taught together, they boost language development even more. And this relationship between reading and writing is also codependent. In fact, writing is directly connected and intertwined with reading. It is a kind, of symbiotic relationship where, according to Bars, progress is in one mode is intimately related to and dependent on progress in another. And reading, provides models that learners can use in their own writing, and writing in response to what has been read actually boosts the comprehension, of the text. And, finally, students are likely to develop more critical thinking skills when responding to literature in a personal way. And this happens both in the first or second language. One way of getting the children actively involved in the reading and the writing process is to use well-known tales and then ask them to play with the characters, the plots, and the events. And this technique is called story silence or story reversals. I'll share with you in a moment an example of this technique, which is beautifully, demonstrated in a story written by Gianni Rodari. You can see a photo of Gianni Rodari, on my slide. So Gianni Rodari is often described as the father of modern Italian children's literature. In this book called Telling Stories Wrong, Rodari gets, a classic fairy tale and creates a story within a story. He sort of, manipulates, he changes the various story elements, in ways that are quite hilarious. So in this manner, in this way, he manages to actively engage the reader in new meaning-making processes, but using something which is already familiar to the learner. So before I read a short extra of the story and make a complete fool of myself, I'd like you to answer the following questions, in the chat box. So I have a picture for you, okay? And this will help you understand which story I'm talking about. Now, would you like to write your answers in the chat box? So number one, what is the story called? So right, let's see. Okay, basket of food, Little Red Riding Hood, grandmother. Soup, I have soup here. Okay, right, absolutely. Is it porridge? Yes, we'll see about that. Okay, if it's porridge. Yeah. Okay, good. So the bad wolf, the big bad wolf. Yes, basket of food. That's brilliant. Okay, so we have muffins and cookies as far as, okay, good. Now, it's true that there are various versions, of this popular tale, and besides the two best known versions, one was written by Charles Perrault and the other one by Brothers Grimm. But this time around, okay, we are going to see Rodari's version, and you'll tell me if you like it. So I'm just going to read a short extract, of the story. And okay, and here it goes. So the name of the story is called Telling Stories Wrong. So in Rodari's, particular book, specific book, Telling Stories Wrong, Grandpa, you can see him on the screen, is retelling the tale of Little Red Riding Hood to his granddaughter. I feel a bit creative. Let's call her Alice. It's the girl with the long red braid. Now, but Alice's grandpa is presenting a rather unusual version of the story, and the child keeps correcting him. So Grandpa begins the story by saying, once upon a time, there was a girl named Little Yellow Riding Hood. Have it wrong, Grandpa? Little Riding Hood, cries Alice. Oh, that's right. Little Red Riding Hood. So one day her mother called her and said, listen, Little Green Riding Hood. And Alice said, Red. Really don't know what's wrong with Grandpa, so I think his mind is somewhere else. Oh, that's right, Little Red Riding Hood, her mother said. Now go to Aunt Hildegard's house and bring her this potato peel. No, it's go to your grandmother's house and bring her this warm loaf of bread, not muffins, loaf of bread. Oh, right. So the little girl went into the woods, and that's where she met a giraffe. And this is the time I say, oh my God, I hope this is not recorded. Now, so inspired, by story salads, and story reversals, what we decided to do, in our classes is to implement this creative writing approach, but this time, using a different tale, Cinderella. Okay. On the slide I'm sharing right now, an extract of the story that my students wrote some years ago. So the children worked, in small groups of 3 or 4 students. And they kept, as you can see, they sort of kept the original structure of the tale, but they changed, many things, or events in their story. I haven't underlined all of them, some of the most striking examples. And, the kids actually, added their own ideas. It is quite interesting to see, that there are quite a few references of luxury, fashion brands, or of luxury brands you mentioned in their writing. And I believe, that this sort of reflects, the current trends or the impressions or even, experiences, of the children while they were crafting this piece of writing. So they brought in, their own understandings. And this is what I really like about that. So for instance, Cinderella gets, an haute couture dress, and a Gucci one, and slippers, fur slippers to be precise, from her fairy godfather. So we don't have fairy godmother. This has been changed to something else. She also gets like a full treatment, at the beauty salon. And we even have, a cinematographic reference. Cinderella's driver looks like a movie star. Okay. Now, moving on to something different, I'm going to get you into a bit of writing. Okay. Now, we are going to, let's say, explore a more contemporary approach to creative writing. And this time, this approach was devised, by the film industry. and more precisely by a woman called Emma Coates. Now, Emma Coates used to be a storyboard artist, working for Pixar movies. So one day she decided to share, some of her wisdom, some of the wisdom she gained, working on successful stories, such as the one you see on the screen called Brave. I think it was released in 2012. Did you watch this one? Yes, I really enjoyed it. So what Coates did, she tweeted, well, that was way before Threads was a thing and X was called Twitter. So anyway, so Coates shared her thoughts on how to create, a good story. And these were later on known as the 20 rules, of storytelling. These rules include some interesting ideas, such as, how to build your characters, how to create a twist in your story that involves like a major change, in the fortune of your leading characters, of your protagonists, and so many more. You don't necessarily have to follow or use all of them, but you can pick the ones that you like or you feel that they are more suitable or appropriate for you or for your learners. The one I chose for you today is rule number 4, and which is called the story spine. Okay, and this is rule number 4, the story spine. So the story spine is, in fact, what we also call the basic story structure or the outline of our story. This outline, can be used, for very young, ESL second language learners or foreign language learners in order to design and even, understand the basic elements of story writing. Now, if your learner's level of English is more advanced, you could encourage them to add more details, to their writing. So in step 1 and step 2, that is to say, at the beginning of our story, we need to set stage, to establish the setting of the story and introduce our characters in their natural habitat, if I may say, in their normal world. This can be, like a faraway land, a castle, a parallel universe, a planet, or even, a real life setting such as your neighborhood or your school. The characters, can be animals, it can be unicorns, it can be imaginary characters, it can be real characters, whatever you want. So while we were doing this activity in class, my students wanted to talk about, a distant planet, which they agreed to call Exxon, planet Exxon. They all wanted to have an alien, as the main character, as the protagonist in their story. But, they came up, they had different versions, of aliens in their mind. So we decided to draw them. Then they gave them, different names, and they discussed their appearance. But they also gave some background information, about their character and how they behaved or what they did in their daily life. So, for example, the character, the alien, the last Zolex, okay, the purple alien, they said, every day Zolex had a bath in filthy and smelly slime, which was full of green worms. I know, sorry about that. I know, it is a picture, that actually sticks with you for a very long time. Then afterwards, we need to come up with an event, that upsets the hero's life. And this acts like a trigger event that will change things, but or even for worse, depending on the story you want to tell. For example, one day, The shop ran out of smelly slime and Zolex couldn't take his usual bath. Okay. Now, steps 4 and 5 are what we call the climax of your story. This is where the hero, the protagonist, does something or reacts to the trigger event you mentioned earlier. And finally, in step 6, the characters overcome, their adversity, their difficulties, and become better or stronger or a better version of themselves. So, are you ready? Okay, we are going to write, a story together. This is the fun part. We are going to use Emma Coates' story spine to create, a very short story. There are 6 prompts in all. Wait until I show all of them and then start and post them, in the chat. So, are we ready? Yeah, good. So, the first one is, once upon a time there was. So, we finish this one. So, you're going to provide the setting of the story and the characters. All right. So, moving on to the next one. So, every day, what did our character do? Every day. Then one day something happened. That's your trigger event. Then I have, because of that. Then I have again another because of that. And we are going to conclude until finally. Okay. Okay, when the cat went missing, okay, until finally he decided to approach him. Yes, that's good. The poor level would get up at the break of dawn and set out to find his fortune. One day, oh God, one day he met a wise man who told him, look into yourself. All right. Good. So this is Emma Coates' story spine. I don't think we have a lot of time, left. So I will quickly move on to the next. So this is my group of learners. Okay, they are A1 to A2 level. So we used Emma Coates' rule number 4 for stories of the story spine in order to create, let's say, the backbone of the story. And right over here we have one of my learners say, once upon a time there was a princess in a castle. So she chose, a fantastic setting. Every day she ate blueberries, out of her garden. One day she ate the blueberries and she got an allergic reaction. And because of that, she had red spots on her skin until finally a paramedic saved her and she was on cloud nine. Finally, what I used are graphic organizers, which is a very nice to organize for the learners to organize their story. They can draw pictures that accompanies, their storytelling. If you want, there's a QR code, on my screen, on your screen, and you can if you scan the QR code, it will take you to the graphic organizer and you can download that one. Now, and this, marks the end, of this session. And I'd like to say a couple of things before we move on to questions. Creative writing, deserves a place in the ESL and the EFL classroom because it is a valuable tool, that boosts language development. But it also does so many other things. Students can have fun and play with the characters, the plot. They can even play with the language. I just saw, one of the participants talking about the props, card and so on. Perhaps another time we can discuss this one because it's very interesting. But, if we encourage the learners to use their imagination, through creative writing tasks, teachers, can help them to improve their critical thinking skills. And, my last slide is a bit food for thought, and this is a great quote by Maloney, who said, "Teaching and studying creative writing requires no special talents whatsoever, no elite gift given to a lucky few. Anyone who can learn to write can learn to write creatively. And anyone who can teach writing can also teach creative writing. All that remains is the will." So, thank you very much.
That was great. Thank you, Nita. And thank you everyone for your participation as well. It's great to see you all taking part. We do have a few people that have asked to see the QR code again, please, Anita, for the resource that you shared. So thank you for sharing that. That was really, really great session. We are almost out of time, but I think we have just 2 questions. Oh, one of them was for the QR code. So Sophia also asked, is it a twist or conflict to drive the story? When you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing. But that's the thing. With academics, they use different terminology to refer to exactly the same thing. So twist or conflict in the story, or you also may have it as problems and solutions in the story. So as a problem as well, it's your conflict. So there are different terms, to describe exactly the same thing.
Okay, great, thank you. And can you please just show the references slide so they can screenshot it for further reading as well? That'd be great. Yeah, some great ideas there. So I hope you all enjoyed that. That was a great start to the conference. So thank you again, Anita, for joining us.